What's happening, roadies? This is Chris Adamson.
This is Dave Rat.
What's happening, roadies? This is Nathan Lively from Sound Design Live, and you're listening to Roadie Free Radio.
What's up, roadies? My name is Larry Milburn, and this is Roadie Free Radio, your VIP pass to meet and greet the stars behind the scenes of the music and film business. All right, what's happening, roadies? Welcome back to another fantastical week. This is episode number 103 already. I can't believe it. This is your host, Larry Milburn, not coming at you from the barn this week. I'm actually coming at you from the kitchen. So if I happen to be using maybe a slightly more subdued voice, my wife is away. I've got the charge of my son this weekend, my 3-year-old. He's upstairs sleeping. It's just about midnight on Saturday night when I'm recording this. You're getting it fresh Monday morning. And hopefully you are well and you've had a wonderful, wonderful week. But yes, I'm working late tonight. Got some edits to do. Got to get the show done. And, got to keep my voice down because the kid's trying to sleep up there. He's exhausted. We had an epic day today. I will tell you, fatherhood is absolutely amazing. I almost said fucking awesome. It is fucking awesome. I don't know why I stopped myself. I should have just said fatherhood is fucking awesome. That's what it is right there. Bam. You heard it here. First thing Monday morning. People, how are you? How are you doing? Are you having fun out there? Listen, I hope you caught, if you did not catch, the new Q&A that just came out this week, building a community. Had a great question come in about trying to find a monitor engineers group, and so I asked that question. I was given that question. I asked it on this week's Q&A, and we talked about building community. And if you can't find a community of like-minded people around you, you should start that community and build it up yourself. Anyway, go check it out. For those of you that listen, thank you so much, man. The response to it was awesome, and questions are starting to come in. Don't forget, you can send me a question to info@roadiefreeradio.com, and I will take it, and I will try to answer it on air on YouTube and then spit the audio out for you guys to hear it. I got a question. For you folks. I need some help. I have a pair of earplugs that I use, and by the end of the night, they hurt. I don't know the name. I should have gotten the name of them and had them right here so that I could tell you what they are. But they're basically those little things that have like the 3, ridges, and you stick them in your ear, and they've got a metal. Obviously, you stick them in your ear, you ding dong. They've got that little metal filter thing in them. I don't know what the hell it is. And mine are see-through, and they come in a little plastic hard shell case. Anyway, you open your ear canal, you shove those things in there. Mine hurt by the end of the night, and it's annoying because if you're wearing them for 2 hours or whatever it is at a concert, and you're filming, and you're constantly moving these things in and out of your ear to do something or try to talk to somebody, they're just not comfortable. So can any of you guys please recommend some good earplugs that I can wear when I'm at a show, whether I'm just hanging out listening or I'm actually working and I'm shooting the show? I got to get up close. A lot of times I'm right up next to the stage. I got monitors blasting at me or a PA system blasting at me or whatever it is. So I need some protection. And these things just, they do good, but they're just, they hurt, man. So any suggestions, hit me up, info@roadiefreeradio.com. And let's see, we got Nathan Lively this week. Nathan Lively from Sound Design Live. Nathan's a good dude. He had me on his show about a year and a half ago, and I wanted to get him on our show, so he is here. We are chatting. We have a great chat. I'll tell you more about him in a second. Oh, I got something for you, man. I got one for you. Mark Rufino. I know you're listening, buddy. I know you're out there, and I know you're listening. Dude, this guy sent me one of the nicest emails, and I just wanted to take a second to say thank you. He wrote me an email. He's a big fan of the show. He's listened to every episode, which is kind of scary because I don't think the show really kicked in till about around episode 30, but I appreciate all of you that are going back listening to the first 30 or so. Anyway, Big fan of the show, and just wanted to offer some encouragement about the debt situation that I mentioned a couple of weeks back, and that I'm reading Dave Ramsey's book, and I'm trying to get on a plan and trying to get some shit sorted out. And it was just an awesome email. Mark, you rock, dude. Mark is a social worker and an audio engineer, and that is awesome. So, Mark, you earned yourself a couple of stickers, my man. Hit me up with your address, and we will get those out to you. All right? info@roadiefreeradio.com. You know the spot. You sent me an email. And I want to hear from the rest of you guys. Let me know what's going on. Let me know your thoughts on things. Let me know your thoughts on the show, good or bad. That's totally cool. Let me know what you're up to. And I want to hear from you. info@roadiefreeradio.com. Do it. Guys, I'm listening to, for those of you that don't know this already, my cousin was Michael Bloomfield, great blues guitarist of the 60s, played on Bob Dylan's Highway 61 Revisited. That's him on Like a Rolling Stone. Played with Al Cooper, phenomenal album called Super Sessions. Anyway, great guy. Died of a drug overdose in 81, something like that. I never got to meet the man. I feel like his spirit's been with me, my whole life. It's one of the reasons I started playing guitar. Anyway, I'm listening to some Mike the other night while I was packing up my gear. And for the first time, man, I actually got pissed about the fact that he's not here, and I don't know him, and I'm never going to know him, and I can't sort of share my passion and my love for the podcast and who I'm meeting and the guitar players and the artists and all that. I can't share that with him, because I would imagine, even if I didn't know him, if I didn't know him up to this point, is what I'm trying to say. I'm sure with the podcast and things happening, I could have sought him out. I could have talked to him, and it just would have been awesome, man. And it was a bummer. It's a bummer. It kind of bummed me out. I'm not trying to get heavy on you. I'm just saying it would be cool. It'd be cool to talk to somebody like that. Here's the second part of it, though. Here's the second part, and this one's for you. Listen to more music. This is a music podcast. There are many music podcasts out there. Our days are so hectic. Our days are so crazy with things and devices and phone calls and texts and emails and all this crap. But, listening to music, taking a moment to listen to an album start to finish and just hanging out and doing that, it's great. Music is good for you. It is good for your soul. Don't let it go, man. All right, listen. Here we go. God, I feel like I got heavy on you. Whew. Whew. Nathan Lively has worked with people like John McLaughlin, the Ringling Brothers Circus. He's toured all over the world. He's been recognized by the San Francisco Theater Critics Circle with an excellence in theater sound design. And he's performed at such amazing places as South by Southwest. He's got a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Music and Technology from the City College of New York. The guy's pretty awesome, man. He is also the host. If you don't know Nathan, he's the host of the podcast and educational series and website and YouTube channel Sound Design Live. Nathan breaks it down. Interesting story. I really dug talking to him as a podcaster, as a fellow podcaster, just to hear his track and how it's gone and how long he's been at it. And of course, as a sound engineer and his career and how he got to where he is and all the different steps that he's taken, and then actually realizing that the education part and being a teacher was something that really hit him hard, and that's what he wanted to do. His podcast has helped thousands and thousands of people. He's got some great new books out, by the way. If you haven't heard, Get on Tour is coming out. You can find all this stuff through his website, Master Your Craft, Sound Design Live. He's written a bunch of ebooks. You can find them at sounddesignlive.com. Go ahead and do so. Folks, once again, thank you so much, Mark Ruffino. You rock, dude. I can't wait to talk to you in person. Send me that address. I'm going to get you some stickers. The rest of you, let me know about some earplugs. Earplugs, man. All right? Here we go. Mr. Nathan Lively.
Hit it. Call yourself a roadie. Call yourself a roadie. Call yourself a roadie.
Dude, what's going on in Minneapolis?
Wow.
Sounds like an exciting place to live, Nathan.
This is going to be a great interview.
Here we
it's
go.
Like 2 pieces of white bread stuck together, nothing in between. Just
Nothing.
two interviewers just interviewing each other about nothing.
It is.
No, I just got back from California,
I'm glad you have so much confidence in me, bud.
it's going to be great.
gonna be
I just
awesome.
got back from California. I'm happy. We were on sort of vacation for a couple weeks. We were, my wife and I were at a couple of weddings, and it was just good to be back in California. I mean, even with the fires there, just the weather's so nice, and that's where still most of our friends are. So it was cool.
How long have you been in Minneapolis?
A little over a year now.
You have been all around this world, haven't you? It's pretty spectacular, dude. Portugal, San Francisco, Austin, New York, everywhere. Do you miss
Ambition
that
is a
much
crazy
traveling?
thing.
Do you miss traveling that much?
No, I don't. In fact, that's probably the main reason that I don't really tour anymore, is that I just kind of got sick of the traveling. I guess I do like traveling. It's just, it's funny. I'm working on this book right now with all these people, and everyone pretty much says the same thing, which is that the best thing about touring is the travel. And then the worst thing about touring is the travel.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably the same for everyone in the world. There's just like so many great things about travel, but then there's almost as many bad things. So I don't know. I'm really glad that I did so much traveling in my 20s, and now I'm just happy to sort of like stay in one place as much as possible and enjoy being calm and relaxed, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the book, so let's get to the book. Get
Okay.
on Tour, which I totally missed the boat on.
That's okay.
There's gonna be another one. Tell us about the book, dude.
I'm really happy that you are interested in my projects. I'm always trying to do kind of experimental things and invite people to do new and weird things. And so for you to, number one, email me back is special. But then the number two, also say, yeah, I'm interested in that, is amazing for me. And then the fact that you're busy and have a lot going on also makes me really happy, because I love to see that, my friends are busy and have a lot of things going on. If you were to email me back and say, I have nothing going on, and I'd love to participate, that might be worse in a way,
True.
So I'm happy that you're busy.
That would have been my life a year ago. I went through an awful slump work-wise, filmmaker-wise. That's when I started the podcast, basically, right in that sort of quiet time. I was like, oh, this will be a little thing that I do in the background. Mm-hmm. And I want to talk to you about podcasting and your journeys. There's a lot with you to chew off, because there's a lot of different cool angles. But just your journey and how it's grown for you and some of the lessons you've learned. But let's get back to the book here, because it's an awesome book, and it's exactly what you and I talk about on our shows, and one of the things we're passionate about. You dive a lot more in general. You dive more into the technical than I do, because you are an actual engineer. I myself am what they call a hack. I'm a fake.
So all those guitars and things you have behind you and that recording studio you have in your house, it's all fake, right?
This is all a movie set.
It's all props.
They're all props. I don't know how to do these things. This wall of amps I have, you can't see. I got a wall of amps over here. They're all fake. They're just fake cabinets. I light them up at night, sit here and pretend I know what I'm doing.
I'll tell you, just as a quick aside, I heard an interview with Terry Gross yesterday, and she's a sound engineer. Like, when she started out in radio, she was doing some small feminist talk show, but she had to learn how to like make her own mix and run the board. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Terry Gross is a sound engineer. Anyway.
You should get her on the show.
Sure.
Not if I get her
I
first.
don't know how you do that, but that'd be great.
That would be awesome.
Oh, right. So the book. Right. So we get all these great information on our shows, and my very first book is a compilation of that information. So I've always been sort of trying to figure out how to just disseminate these ideas better. And I have come to realize over the last couple of years that I really like teaching, but probably my greatest skill so far, or the way that I've found that I can be most helpful to people, is by sort of gathering this information, spreading it farther, presenting it to more people. And that is just sort of doing some of the legwork of just compiling it all. But then it's also like packaging it in a way that is a little bit easier for people to digest.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest questions that I get all the time from people who email me or who I do career coaching with is, how do I get on tour? And it's always so hard because there's not an easy answer.
Yeah.
There's no step-by-step. There's no checklist. It's basically like any, how do I have a fulfilling life? How do I have a fulfilling career type of question.
Yeah.
That unless you're like my twin brother and I'm starting out knowing you like the back of my hand, it's still hard to answer that question. But I already don't, if I don't know anything about you, it's so hard to answer that question. So this book is called Get on Tour, The Career Paths of Top Live Sound Engineers Revealed, is an attempt to answer that question. And I did that the only way I know how, which is to just ask a bunch of people to share their stories. So I got people like Robert Scoville, Buford Jones, Scott Adamson, John Burton, who else? Michelle Pettinato, Nicholas Radina, Dave Swallow. And I got Darren De La Soul to write the foreword, who, by the way, she is an amazing writer and has a bunch of experience in her own right. I was writing the cliff notes for the book, just working on it, finishing up yesterday. And I basically just copied her entire foreword almost as just, she's such a great writer. Anyway, I'm a big fan of hers. She runs an online training place called Soul Sound. So we have a lot in common. I feel like she's almost like the UK version of me. She does a lot of like trying to bring people together and do a lot of the same stuff that I do. Anyway, so Get on Tour is the book. I invited all these people to write something for it, and they all did things that were very different. Some of them focused very much on how they got into touring. Some of them focused very much on sort of like how terrible traveling is. And there are definitely some themes that run through it, but it's just so valuable to just hear all these different paths, because if you're in a position like you and I have both been, Larry, where we're sort of trying to figure out like, what's the next step? How do I get to where I want to be? Is that going to make me happy? Just hearing how other people have done it gives you ideas.
Yeah.
It's ideas to steal, but then it also might just make new ideas pop into your head as you see all these different people who have been through the same thing you've been through.
Yeah. And it may also be validation, right? That like, okay, because you hear someone else's story and you're like, all right, I'm doing what that person did. I just need to hang out, just keep doing it, just hang in there, right? It's going to be okay. I'm on the right path. It may just take a while.
Sure. And a perfect, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but a perfect example of that is Darren De La Soul, who, when she was 30 years old, decided, oh, I want to do touring now. I want to be a professional sound engineer now. Went back to school, did training, and now, had this whole separate career starting when she was 30. So, that'll be great news for, I get emails from people from all ages who want to get into touring, from when they're in their teens to when they're in their 40s and 50s.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I think, if I think back on a lot of the stories that I share with the show and everything that people have told me, and I'm sure you found the same thing, is it's like, it's almost that thing of just playing the long game and being patient and just showing up every day, every night, whatever it is, doing your best work, because inevitably people are watching and you may get that call. I was talking to Lauren Wheaton. He was my first guest back after my hiatus this summer last week, or a couple of weeks ago now. And same sort of thing, I can't remember who was having April Wine or something. And, the management from that company was like, approached him and said, hey, Steve Smith needs somebody and we need a drum tech. Do you want to go? We saw your work ethic on display. We'd love you to come out with us. And that story, or like working at SIR, slogging away in rehearsal rooms, and somebody, headliner comes in and needs to rehearse for a week, and you're just the guy or gal who was on the spot and there and serviced them with whatever they needed and had a good attitude. Like that's, 90% of it, right, is probably having a good attitude. And and learning and being there for people. And then you get the break, you get the call, and maybe you don't, but you also find, I think, probably the more you do and the more you're out there, you probably find what you think you want to do.
So yes, totally agree with everything you said, but I also want to point out that I think you're going to really enjoy the book because not everyone's story in the book matches that template.
Right.
Yes, a lot of them do,
yeah,
but there are definitely some outliers. Heather Lynn Egan, for example, was doing work, but then just decided, now I want to go on tour. So she just looked through job listings online, applied for jobs that way.
Right.
The people she did the interview with had never worked with her.
Right.
Sorry, I keep moving out of the way of the microphone because I didn't set it up well to see you. Anyway.
It's all good.
And so she found her job that way. So it wasn't just meeting people, wasn't just knowing people. She had the experience to back it up, but she found a job through kind of a traditional route of going through job listings online. And then there are a couple of other people. Alice Stefancic comes to mind, who was working in a music store, and that's not exactly mixing shows.
Right.
That's not being on tour. He was working in a music store, and he knew people that way from just selling them stuff and like having conversations with them. So there were other ways that people got to know each other, but there are also other paths besides just meeting people and making relationships on tour. That is really common. That's probably the most common way, but I just want to highlight that there are some contrasts and some outliers in the book.
Sure.
Myself included, of people who, had slightly different stories.
Yeah, absolutely. What, by the way, I keep looking over your shoulder. You pointed out my set back here. You've got like a road-worn monitor up there.
Yeah,
with a flight
my wife
case.
got tired of this stuff being in the living room, and she said, "Get it out of here."
Is that thing plugged in, ready for action?
No, it's all just stacked up. This is actually just my practice rig.
Oh, nice.
Of speakers that actually on loan from one of my students here in Minneapolis, and I don't actually own any equipment myself, barely any.
Uh-huh.
So I loaned some equipment from one of my students and used it to just like teach myself smart in my living room, and then from that started doing videos about a year ago, and then was able to, I recently put up a whole video series on YouTube called Get Started with Sound System Tuning, because I realized it was sort of this hole in my curriculum that I have online of just for the people who are kind of taking their very first steps.
Yeah.
So that's what that stuff is. It's sort of like my practice rig. And it's great because it's kind of crappy and it's definitely road worn. And that is the most interesting stuff to measure. When you measure something, like when you go to seminars, this happens a lot, especially if you're at like a Meyer Sound seminar or something. It's like you measure like some of the best speakers in the world under, the best conditions. And then when you measure it, it just looks like nothing,
Yeah, right. Right.
It's too good. You're like, there's nothing really to do with it because it looks good. It sounds good already.
Yeah.
So it's actually more interesting to measure things that are all beaten up.
Sure. Well, that's mostly what you're going to get if you're out there, depending on the level of touring you're doing, right?
Sure.
Or place that you're at. All right. So Get on Tour. It's out now. Just last week it came out? Or are you still getting it?
No,
out?
it's actually coming out. I have the date for you. It's in 2 weeks, September something. Let's see. I wrote it down. September 17th.
September 17th. Excellent.
Yep. That's the date. So it'll be free on Sound Design Live for a week. I like to do that just for, the early adopters, kind of generate some interest around it, see if people like it, get some feedback. And that also gives me a chance to like correct any big errors. If it's free for a while, some people download it and they say, "Hey, Nathan, you forgot the words X, Y, and Z on this page." And I can fix those.
Yep.
And then after that, it'll be for sale at sounddesignlive.com.
Nice. So that's the newest one. You've got 3 others under your belt. 105
That's right.
questions, Master Your Craft, Sound Design Live.
Yep.
Nice. And how are those doing?
Those are doing good. So the most popular one is definitely Master Your Craft. It is the one it has several really good interviews with Bob McCarthy. It used to be called Master Your Craft, something about all the benefits you can get from learning sound system tuning. And then I realized that was sort of misleading because the book is it's about half interviews with Bob McCarthy and other people, and then about half my own original content. And so then I changed the subtitle to essays and interviews on sound system tuning.
Got it.
But that's the most popular one. Just a lot of really good sort of down-to-earth advice about working in small rooms, working in unideal conditions. And I try to kind of expose a lot of the mystery and the voodoo behind sound system tuning, because it's not just for big tours anymore. Mm-hmm. This kind of technology is available to everyone. You can download an app on your computer today, and you probably have all of the hardware that you need at home already to try some of this stuff. So I just try to, basically everything I do now is just to try to motivate people to get started. Because I have realized, doing all the interviews that I've done with my podcast and doing just my experience as an engineer and all the training that I've done so far, I'm just realizing that the most important thing I can do is just motivate people to get started, because it's only really getting your hands on the tools and getting experience in the field that does anything for everyone. And I see it happen all the time, that people go to seminars and there's sort of this information dump and this brain dump, and then they don't really get it under their hands then, and then maybe they come back a year later and they haven't really progressed. So master your craft. That's kind of what it's about, is just getting people into this headspace that it's easy to get started, and you should get started right away.
Yeah. I like this piece of you that likes to demystify this a bit and make it accessible, whether you're trying to get on tour, whether you're trying to learn sound system tuning. That's a cool part of it.
It's important. My favorite, so I have one testimonial from, or I don't know if it's a testimonial or a quote, whatever, on the sales page for my main course, Pro Audio Workshop Seeing Sound, from Mauricio Ramirez, one of my favorite teachers, who's doing seminars and doing education with Meyer Sound. And he said, "You're one of the only people I know who's trying to do this for mere mortals." And I thought that was a really funny thing to say. And then I thought about, that's kind of true. Like, I'm constantly trying to open this up for more people.
Yep.
Because I think it's so valuable, and it's really the foundation of what we do as sound engineers, is just getting waveforms basically from wherever it originated into people's ears. And the big part of it that a lot of people don't understand, but which is probably the first thing we should learn as sound engineers, is how sound travels through the air, and the physics of getting sound from speakers to people's ears. Yeah. So I'm kind of on a mission to demystify a lot of this stuff. I think business part of it is a big passion of mine. But the technical side of sound system optimization and design is also a big interest of mine, and is definitely the biggest part of my business. It's the thing that people are most interested in studying and training with me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I can't remember where we started with this. What was your original question?
I don't remember. I'm just just the
The
fact that, like,
demystification
the
part.
demystification part of it. Yeah, that you're that's your big mission, and you have a lot of different businesses, basically, right? I mean, you've got sort of your main thing, but I mean, between the podcast, putting out the books, training courses, being a live sound engineer / designer, you have a lot going on.
Yeah, and as you're talking, I'm just remembering another quote from another teacher that really made me happy, but it was actually a criticism from him. I got a criticism from another teacher who said, you should stop trying to make this so easy for people. And I was like, whoa.
Wow.
Perfect. It's working. I feel like I've arrived. This is exactly what I'm trying to do.
Why did he say that?
Why did he say that? Because I have been publishing a lot of videos recently, just trying to make things seem easier. Like, hey, you don't need a really fancy microphone to get started. Hey, you don't need a really fancy audio interface to get started. Hey, you can use a free piece of software. You don't have to pay $1,000 for Smart right away. Mm-hmm. That's a great piece of software, but you can start for free. And you know what? You don't even need to understand everything that's on there.
Right.
It's so much information. And that is another reason why people get overwhelmed initially and then stop.
Right.
So how can we sort of dumb this down? What's like the smallest step we can take? What if we just look at one piece of information? So I've been doing a lot of videos like that, like, hey, don't worry about all this stuff. And so I think in the past, the reason I'm trying to do it this way, Larry, is that in the past, I think what people have tried to do so far is to come up with a silver bullet and say, hey, sound engineers, you don't need to understand math. You don't need to understand physics. You can be dum-dums. You just push this button. We are the manufacturers. We'll take care of it for you. Here's a silver bullet. This is going to solve all your problems. And it never works.
Yep.
Maybe it makes small advances. Maybe it helps a little bit, but it's never really a silver bullet. So I think a better approach is education for sure. But then if we want to get more people involved, and we need to, because, systems are only getting more complicated.
Yep.
Just adding more things to the systems all the time. We need more people to understand these foundational elements. And so if we want to get more people involved, we need to be inviting them in. Like, come on in. Like, let's have a cup of coffee. Let's, let's sit down together and talk. Like, this doesn't have to be so scary.
Right.
So that's kind of my approach. And I think it may look like a dumbing down to other people, but for me, it's just sort of like a simplifying, like what's the 20% here we need to know to get the biggest results. So
sure.
So yeah, I think that's why probably he said that.
Okay, cool.
And
man.
I felt like, okay, I think maybe I'm going in the right direction.
Right. You took it as a positive.
Yeah.
I find it interesting too, as I was looking through. So by the way, I just want to go back to Get on Tour. I like the way you structured the book by starting with people, let's say, with the least amount of experience, or sort of the, least amount compared to a Scoville or a Buford, someone like that, right? So that, and you say it in the foreword, basically, that, you did it that way. So in the beginning, as you're reading it, it feels more accessible or attainable if you're just starting out. Yeah. Obviously, you want to get to the other stories and hear these longer careers, but so I like that. But I find, overall, what I found interesting is the choice. And I know you have an extensive theater background as well. Where I come from in the film world, sound design is one thing. And when you get to like live music, it's not so much sound design as it is live engineering or sound engineering, right? But I just found it interesting that you chose that overall to look at all of that as sound design, because it is in a lot of ways, right? I mean, you are setting up systems and audio pieces and plugins and everything like that, and you are designing the sound, whether it's at a small club rock show or a large venue or in a theater, to shape someone's experience. I just thought that was an interesting twist, as opposed to calling it, live sound engineering, basically.
Yeah.
Is that how you see it?
So if I'm understanding your question, you're saying that
It's more of a comment than a question.
Yeah, comment.
An observation.
There's maybe not a super clear delineation between whose job is what. So let me answer part of this and see if I'm going in the right direction from the comment that you're talking about. So a lot of the people that I talk to, a lot of my students, and a lot of the work that I do is the kind of job where you wear multiple hats. Mm-hmm. So you push boxes through elevators and upstairs. I guess you're not pushing boxes upstairs, carrying boxes upstairs, pushing boxes all around. You're unloading trucks. So you're basically a mover at that point. And then you take that hat off and you put another hat on, which is the sound system design. So you got to figure out where to put all the speakers. And then you've got to put on the sound system optimization hat and make it work in the room and do your best to, make it transparent. And then you've got to take that hat off and put on the sound engineer hat or the front of house mixer hat. And depending on how that, if it's concert sound, maybe you're working for the band, and so you have a more creative element there. And then maybe you take that hat off and you're the tour manager. You're some kind of manager of some kind.
Right.
And then, I don't know, maybe you're also the technical director. And so there's all these different hats you can wear at one time. And so maybe that's why you're seeing a lot of the overlap, is that in my career, I've had a lot of overlap, and I work with a lot of people who have a lot of overlap, either because of business necessity, because they want to get a job. And if you want the job, you've got to be a tour manager plus a sound engineer.
Right.
Or because we're just people who either we don't know exactly what we want to do yet, so we're trying lots of different things, or we like the variety of doing lots of different jobs. So we take calls for multiple different jobs that have jobs where we wear different hats, and that's fun for me. So is that kind of where you were going?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I guess what I was saying, like sound design in film, for example, right, is coloring the audio experience while watching the moving image. So dropping in a car passing behind you and all that kind of stuff. That's when I think of sound design, that's what I think of. I don't necessarily think of Robert Scoville as a sound designer as much as I think of him as a live sound engineer.
Yes. So I don't know if he thinks of himself as a sound designer that much. He definitely has a big hand in it, but on the tours that he works on, there is probably a sound designer that worked at the production company that designed the system that he's going out with.
There you go.
And then he's got a sound system engineer or a system tech on his show that sets it up and does most of the optimization. And then he comes in at the end. And now he might jump in at different points of the process there. But I believe he considers himself focusing on front of house mixing, but then he also understands the entire process.
Sure.
So that's not his focus. And I would say most of the people in this book consider themselves first and foremost front of house mixers, touring sound engineers, and some of them also do system tech work. There's only one guy in here, and I think it's Chase Benedict, who really prefers the title system tech. Like that's his main bag.
Right.
That's the main thing that he likes to do. The rest of them are touring front of house engineers.
Yeah. It's interesting that there are people that are like, you know what, I don't want to mix. I want to be the systems tech. Like a lot of assistants, that I've met along the way. They like that.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the correct connection, but you've probably also met people who like, I don't want to work with humans. That's the hard part. I don't want to be the production manager.
Right.
I want to work with pieces of equipment, like things I can sort of rely on. So I'll be the technical director.
Yes.
And let me like help you get all your machines in order, and I'll call ahead and make sure that they have everything we're expecting in the writer for when it comes to like machines.
Right.
And then you have to wrangle the talent and like talk to them and get them on stage on time and deal with all their problems and questions.
Right.
So
of which there are many.
Right. So that I think is part of it. There's definitely people who are more interested in the technical side, the physics side. And then I think there are other people who are more interested in having a relationship with the artist, translating their vision into the technical side. And so there's definitely a spectrum, and there's people who are more comfortable in different sides of it. And then people move throughout their career, which is definitely what I did. And I think what most people do, most people start out in music and they realize they sort of have a technical ability. And so then they start helping people with the technical side. Next thing you know, maybe they have their own PA system, they're renting it out. And then maybe later on, they get really into electrical engineering. And so they maybe start building stuff, or they get really into the physics and they start just doing like sound system engineering, sound system tech type jobs. And so it can change throughout your career as sort of your interests develop, I think.
Sure. You've interviewed a ton of people for the podcast. You've interviewed a ton of people for the different books that you have, and brought a lot of these people into your teachings and whatnot. What are some things that you've learned, surprises maybe, along the way? What are a couple things that you've gleaned from some folks that you're like, oh man, that was valuable, or I wish I had known that earlier in my career? Anything stand out?
Sure. Man, the problem with being the guest is that I'm not like a great anecdotalist. So although I have all this experience, I don't know if I'll be able to think of a great story. I mean, the thing that I've had my head in most recently is the book. And so I've had my eyes on those people's stories and their content the most. And sometimes the most, let's see, some of the most surprising things have been how much or how little people earn, and how much or how little that means to them. So not everyone's name I can mention, because not everyone told me this information on the air.
Right.
But one guy who I interviewed, who I thought was pretty well known, and it turns out that he makes $350,000 a year. And I was like, okay, that is the top. So if you're at the top of the music business, that's how much you can earn. And that's like the top of the pyramid, right? Like the very few people get to earn that much just being a front of house mixer. But like it can go way up there. Was like a big surprise to me. I was like, oh wow, like I made like $30,000 last year, probably at that time when I was interviewing him, you know? What else? So I'm just taking a look at the people who are in this book to see what some of the surprises were there. It's surprising. It was surprising, but also comforting to find out that almost everyone hates travel as much as they love the travel part of touring.
Right.
So I realized okay, it's not just me.
Yep. And let me just jump in here. Was your segue into teaching and whatnot born out of that? This is going to wear thin. This travel thing is going to wear thin. What else could I do?
Oh, so no. So this might be interesting for you. Is I started my podcast to get more work as a theatrical sound designer. I had just read the book Crush It by Gary Vaynerchuk at the time. And I was like,
this summer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, man.
So the newer version is probably better. The older version was not great, but it got me really motivated. I was like, oh, I need to start a podcast and a blog and like do all this stuff, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
That'll get me more work.
Yeah.
Little did I know at the time. So for those of you who are listening right now, do not start a podcast to try to get more work as a sound engineer, unless you want to like play the real long game. That's a real long game. Never got more work as a theatrical sound designer because of the podcast, but I just started kind of developing an audience and a tribe around this topic that I like to talk about, which was the technical side of being an audio engineer, the business side of being an audio engineer. And when I started having more and more conversations with people, I started thinking about teaching things, or I started thinking about doing a product for this audience. I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. In fact, I think I probably originally started a rock band in high school, half because I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I mean, looking back in high school, my friend Travis and I, who started the band together, we would go through the Guitar Magazine articles about business with like a fine-tooth comb and like try to do everything step by step. Like we put together a press kit. You know, it seems so silly looking back for like a high school band that wasn't that great, like a mediocre high school band. But we were like, okay, press kit, photos, all this stuff. It goes in a manila envelope. You send it to them on this day. You call them on this day. Blah, 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 blah.
Do you ever get that musician's guide to touring and promotion? You remember that?
No, but we would have. I don't know if we could at the time. I mean, we were really on a budget. So I don't know if we even knew that existed at the time.
Yeah.
So we didn't go that deep, but we were looking at the stuff in the magazine. So anyway, I'd always wanted to be an entrepreneur. And so I'd always been kind of looking at ways to do products, to do services better, to help more people. And so as I saw this audience starting to develop around the podcast, I started thinking, would there be a product here? And so it was just a really long process over, I guess it was 5 years before, from launching the podcast to having my first product. And I didn't know exactly what it was going to be. And so it was a lot of conversations with people, and then that turned into training. And then it was just from trying out things that I realized, oh, I really like being a teacher. Yeah. And then it was from having a couple of successful pilot courses that I started thinking, oh, maybe I could do an education business. Yep. And then that turned into the thing that I'm doing now.
So you've been podcasting for what, 5 years now?
No, so it was 5 years since I did my first product. So probably 7 years now podcasting.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Yeah, I should check on the date about that. But between 5 and 7 years. How about that?
That's amazing, man. So let's talk about your life as a podcaster. Tell me about those beginnings, because I'm only 2.5 or 3 or whatever. I'm 101 episodes.
Yeah, but don't you have more? You almost have more episodes than me, though, at this point. So I've been going pretty slow. I even stopped for 6 months at one point, and then I was only doing it for like a month at a time.
Wow.
I think I have like 110 episodes under my belt.
I'm at 102. I'm going to pass you pretty quick. And now I'm back.
Pretty quick.
But that's funny. You took 6 months off, dude. I took 2 months off maybe 6 months after I started, just because, as you know, this is what I wanted to talk to you about, was just like the grind of like finding the guests and doing the whole thing and getting it out.
Sure.
It just catches up. And we'd gone on a trip to LA. I had like 8 guests lined up. This is my first year that I was going to do in LA. And we went out there with my 1.5-year-old, 1-year-old, something like that. And it was like, okay, clearly I'm not going to be able to go do this. And it just, you just sort of blow out from there. And I put a post up that was like, hey, I got to take a break. And I came back in January, and then I went straight. It was a show every week until pretty much this past May. And I was like, I gotta step back at this point, because you sort of need that break to see where things are at. When you're in it, when you're doing all the chasing and the interviewing and all that kind of stuff, it's tough to sort of see where you're at. But I know I learned, I'm going to throw it back to you. I learned, in the beginning when you start, you're all excited to do this thing. And I'm the same way, by the way, that entrepreneurial thing. Like when I had a band, it was like, what's the sticker going to look like? What's the album cover going to look like? How do we get a van? And there's only 2 of us with acoustic guitars, and all that kind of, think about all that stuff as well.
Sure, you were probably selling stuff at your first show.
Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. And when I started the show, it was sort of the same thing. It was like all that kind of stuff, but you're finding your voice. And I found it took about 25 episodes, 25 to 30. And I remember having this realization of like, because, those first few shows you put out when your numbers are starting to grow, very small, but still you're like, damn, 20 people are listening. I got 20 people are interested in 50 people are interested in what I'm talking about. And I got to like 25 or 30 and was like, well, you better start having something to say. There's that sort of growth in it, right? But it's like in the beginning, I feel like people come running out like, I want to start a podcast, especially now, thanks to people like Gary Vaynerchuk and everything, and just the climate of doing this and the ease of doing it. You come out of the gate, you're just like, I want to do it. I got to do it. And it's like, you got to find your voice, and B, you get to that point, at least I did, where it's kind of like, well, you better have something to say. What are you trying to say? Now that you're shouting from the rooftops, right? What is it that you want people to know, or what are you trying to share with them? And then you kind of get to there's a next stage after that, and on and on. And I'm just curious about that, for you. Well, I'll go back real quick. It terrified me to take that break, because especially when you're first starting out, your numbers just collapse, right? And you're like, oh my God, I got to build all that back up again.
No, the momentum.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to forget about me.
And even in May, I was like, oh my God, like I finally got this thing to a healthy growth place.
Sure. Well, also, I was actively campaiigning against you. So that was another thing that brought down your numbers.
Right, exactly. God forbid we should help each other.
So were you going to... Were you going to say something else?
I was going to throw it back to you. So, tell me about your growth as a podcaster and how you balance all of the grind of doing it all. Because you now have the books,
sure,
your training. I don't have that stuff. Not yet. I'm coming. I'm going to get your market share of that.
Yes. So the interesting thing about podcasting compared to other mediums is that I don't know what the right way to say this is. The sensational way to say it would be, it's harder to bullshit your way through it. It's harder to throw money at it or advertise for it or in other ways promote it besides just the content being good.
Yeah.
And regular.
Yeah.
Like it's really hard to get around that in podcasting because it's just really hard to promote. Still, the way most people find me is by searching in iTunes. For some reason, you just can't get around that. It's not something that's indexed really well by Google. So I try to have, sort of like spicy titles and exciting images now to like help people find it through search engines. But still, most of the time, people hear about it from their friends.
Yep.
Or searching on iTunes.
Yep.
And because you can't really game the system, in other ways that you might be able to through, like, if you're doing text and SEO, or you're doing video and maybe you have, like, I don't know, a bunch of sexy, spicy images in your video, like it's just someone talking and just their voice. And it's just, again, it's just hard to game the system. And so that's why it takes so long to grow. So that's why, I don't remember what the stat is, but something like most podcasts, probably 95% of podcasts that start end at episode 7. And so when I was doing some consulting for a while about podcasting for business, that was one of the first things I would tell people is that, hey, you should probably just first plan to have an episode of 7. I mean, a season of 7, and then take a step back and look at it. Because there are people that I know, I can't remember the name of this podcast right now. I think it was Firehouse. Anyway, a marketing podcast. The guy started it, started a new one, basically reinvented the podcast 3 or 4 times to try and, like, figure out his voice, like you were talking about, figure out, like, the best, like, what am I really trying to share here? Yeah. Okay. So I think that's the interesting part about podcasting that makes it sort of hard to do anything but do great content and deliver it regularly.
Sure.
Now, how you do that without getting burned out, I think, is by having a rhythm that works for you. Yeah. And if you don't know about George Cao, you should read his book, Authentic Content Marketing. It's a short $5 book. Anyone out there who is sort of interested in doing more writing, video creation, or any sort of content around their own business, which you should be, honestly, everyone should be, just because even if you're thinking like, oh, no one wants to read my stuff, or that doesn't work in my business, it just helps you sort of focus your thoughts. Sure. And it's part of the training, I feel like, to be able to write about what you do or do something and have conversations about. Anyway, so George Cao, Authentic Content Marketing, he has been my business coach off and on for the past few years as I've gone on to do other things. And then I'll come back and talk to him again because I just feel like his stuff is so great and so sort of forward thinking and on point. And anyway, he recommends basically everything I'm going to tell you now, which is starting out by doing casual content. So that's what most people get wrong, is that initially they're like, I'm going to have a TV show. And like, well, no, how about you start with a Facebook post and see if you can generate some conversation around that. Right. Or how about you start with a really informal, just article on Medium. And it also happens pretty commonly that the sound engineers that I'm consulting with or coaching say, okay, I need to get my website set up and I need to do all this stuff. And I'm like, well, what's like a little easier, like more informal step we can start with? So there's like, as with everything, and this goes back to what we were talking about earlier with like making it simple to get started and demystifying a lot of this stuff. As with everything, there's usually like a tiny baby steps that are less scary, that are actually really important, so that you can sort of figure out the foundational parts about what you want to be doing. Yeah. So that's kind of the wisdom that I would share, that I didn't make up myself. I just got from other people. George Cao, he probably, put that information together from other people that he talked to and saw as well. But like having a rhythm that works for you. So what didn't work for me and what doesn't work for a lot of podcasters is starting or any content that you want to create is saying, I'm going to do a weekly show. And then you don't think beyond that anywhere. And then you get burned out really fast. Yeah. So that's why seasons are great when it comes to podcasts. And just taking a break and letting people know even ahead of time, like, hey, I'm going to do these 7, 10, 12 episodes, and then I'm going to take a break. But then also sort of having a regular time that you either publish or work on it. So what works for me is having a loose publishing schedule, but more importantly is having a regular just time when I work on it. So one of my favorite quotes from George Cao is, be hard on yourself to show up, but be easy on yourself for the results. So I make sure that every Friday I'm working on my podcast. But sometimes I have shows, so sometimes I'm not doing that on Friday. Right. So maybe I reschedule. I make sure that I'm always working. I try to publish every 2 weeks, but if something happens, like sometimes like I can't get the piece of content, or it's just a huge monster episode like that one I did with 5 different drummers and it took forever to edit. And just producing that whole thing was a huge project. It took a while. I think it took a couple months in total, just like getting all the pieces together. So being hard on myself for showing up, easy on myself for just kind of the results that I produce. And then I can ramp that up over time. So, the results that I produce now that I'm easy on myself about are a lot better than they were 5 years ago. So yeah, I hope that helps a little bit. I think that is the initial part that most people don't know who are starting any new thing, which is like, what can I actually expect from myself and what's going to work for me? Yeah. And you're totally right. Like it's this podcasting thing is such an interesting, just kind of a long game. There are definitely people out there, like if you were to start maybe like a true crime podcast right now, or maybe like a mystery show or something like that, you could probably have some numbers really fast. Yep. And if you have a celebrity name, but if you're just starting something like we are, around a theme, then that takes a while to find the people who are really interested. But then ultimately it's a lot more rewarding because now I publish an episode and people want to talk to me about it, you know? Yeah. Oh, and that's, that's the most rewarding part.
Yeah. Who were some of the early, when you were starting out, who were some of the podcasters that you kind of looked to see what they were doing and gained inspiration from?
Oh, wow. So podcasters. So we mentioned Terry Gross already. Just going back, I'm thinking about, when I was growing up in high school, I was working in a wood shop, a cabinet shop with a neighbor listening to Terry Gross. So she's kind of been with me for a long time. Yep. And as I was listening to other people's podcasts, I would sort of hear the difference between a professional public radio interview and this podcast and think like, hey, I want to bring a little bit more of that professionalism to the kind of interviews that I do. I'm not saying I'm Terry Gross. I'm just saying I'm trying to. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, but my favorite podcasts are all comedy podcasts. And I wish I was a comedian. I wish I was that funny, but I also wanted to make my podcast more funny. So we're all sort of trying to attain like that entertaining educational experience that really gives people value and gets them coming back and develops a following. But so some of my very favorite first podcasts that I was listening to a lot, let's see. So there are a couple that aren't around anymore, which are The Riot Professor with Tig Notaro, who's one of my favorite comedians. Then there's another one called You Look Nice Today, with a guy named Merlin. I can't remember his last name. And I guess another thing that was motivational is that I don't think anyone was doing anything around audio at the time. Mm-hmm. There was maybe the Audio Video Contractors blogcast or something. Man, who else was I listening to around that time? But I was super into podcasts, listening to them all the time for a while. It was mostly business podcasts though, which I don't think people listening to this interview right now would be that interested in, but it was like,
well, I'm sure you must have listened to John Lee Dumas, right?
Nope.
Entrepreneurs on Fire.
Yes. A couple of those.
Yeah.
A couple of those, but he kind of rubbed me the wrong way a little bit. Like I listened to him because I heard about him being so successful and I was like, oh, I better check him out. But I don't know. He kind of rubbed me the wrong way a little bit. I don't know why. Yeah. Man. You would think I would have this on the tip of my tongue if this were, when I was right in the middle of it years ago.
Yeah. Maron? Mark?
Nope.
Never listened to WTF?
Nope. Wow. Never. I've maybe listened to one episode. I'm actually going to see him tomorrow night though.
Are you really?
Yeah. So I'm a fan of his, but I don't listen to his podcast.
Oh, you should check out his show.
All right. Lots of people have told me to listen to it. I think I've heard an episode. It's great. I don't know why. Sometimes when something is really well known, that kind of turns me off.
Yeah, I hear you.
Unfortunately, probably that's probably that's probably just bad for me. Like I'm missing out on something, sort of a cultural experience. And I don't do that with all forms of art, but like I sort of have fun, the fact that I listen to stuff that maybe other people don't listen to. So at this point, it's mainly comedy, but I'm trying to remember what that first inspiration was. There were so many podcasts I really love, but it's just not coming to mind right now.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing, man. And to put this ability, podcasting, to so many people, and you find out whether you're cut out for it or not, if you've got
I think anyone can do a podcast because anyone can have an interesting topic on an interesting conversation on a topic that they're an expert on.
Yep.
Or that they're just really interested in. Right now, I think one thing that is really interesting is people who are documenting their path from being an amateur to an expert.
Yeah.
So, for example, for a little while, I'm less interested in it now, but for a little while, I was closely following a couple of people who were just getting into cryptocurrency and basically documenting their entire arc of like learning something from the ground up. Tim Ferriss has made a whole career out of that, saying like, hey, if I start out like not knowing how to swim and then learn how to swim and then document it, then can I teach you? Same thing with his book about being a chef, which I have read a little bit of. So I guess there's sort of like I guess it's really at the heart of it is the pedagogy that I'm interested in and like the arc of learning.
Yeah.
So podcasting is connected to that somehow.
Yeah. Cool, man. You also play. Do you still get to play?
Not at all. I could.
Yeah.
I have instruments in the house, and I have them from the same stuff that I have made records with in the past, but I don't play anymore, and it is disappointing. But I'm not sad about it anymore.
Yeah.
So no, I'm not playing anymore. At some point, I will again. I'm sure I will. I don't know. There's a certain excitement though, and a certain energy that I get from being an entrepreneur that I've noticed right now that I used to get from being a musician. So I feel like I sort of just traded those things a little bit, and probably in the future, I will find a balance where I'm like doing both.
Yeah, that would be nice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
One of my friends that is inspirational for me has been in a choir, just like an informal like community choir, since we were in college. And she didn't get into it when we were in school, and she's not a music major or anything like that, but got into it later. And that to me sounds like probably one of the best ways to keep doing music. And I'm just mentioning that as like, I'm just thinking in my mind, like that would be a fun way to get like back into music.
Yeah.
Instead of, cause I would want it to be a social thing,
Yep.
I think what I miss most is playing in bands and having fun and energy between people and have it being a social event.
Yeah, exactly. I'm right there with you. Nathan, my friend, you have done a lot of stuff. You've toured all over as a sound engineer. You've done a lot of theater work. You've been recognized for that in San Francisco, right? For a show, a run.
That was such a great show. I wish more people could see it. It got shut down due to copyright infringement.
Really?
That's right. It was a theatrical version of the movie Clue, which is a hilarious movie. So if you're listening to this right now and you haven't seen the movie version of the game Clue, what is the actor's name from Rocky Horror Picture Show?
Wow, now you're putting me on the spot.
Oh, that's embarrassing for both of us.
It's really bad for both of us.
We'll think of it in a second.
Yeah.
So he's the lead in that movie. He's fantastic. Every actor in that movie. So what the producer from Boxcar Theater did was a theatrical adaptation of this movie. And they just did it word for word. And it was hilarious. And I just pulled all the sound effects straight from the movie.
Wow.
Complete infringement. But we thought we would go under the radar because it was such a small theater company. And we didn't.
How long did it last?
We did probably 3 or 4 weeks of shows.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you got shut down, but you still were in there long enough to be recognized by the San Francisco.
That's right, because
Circle.
Yeah, because the critics came through, on the first week.
Right. Good job. Well done.
Thank
So you've had this awesome career as a sound designer, traveling all over the place, successful podcast, successful training programs.
Oh wow, you're making me sound like a big success. This
Right,
is
you
great.
like this? I'm really
I feel so good. My ego can hardly fit in this room right now, Larry.
We must be getting close to the end of the interview because I'm really bringing it home here.
Oh wait, are you about to pop it? Is that what's happening?
That's
You're
it. Here we
me
go.
now? Oh man, I'm gonna cry on your show.
Here it goes. I'm trying. You know
Okay.
what? I'm trying to think. Has anyone cried? Oh yeah, I did have someone cry.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Not like sobbing, but yeah. Partway through the interview, they were talking about this. We're gonna take a segue. Partway through the interview, they were talking about someone that was very close to them who had mentored them, and I looked over and I could see, tears coming down his face. I was like, oh my God. And he got really quiet. It was awesome. That's why I love this. That's why when you ask like, oh, do we need to see each other? Yeah. Cause I like this connection. If I had my way with the show, I'd be traveling to see people, which I try to do, but
Sure. Those are the best.
those are the best. And, but as you know, as we were saying, running a show, doing this every week, especially now with the 3-year-old, I got to get a hall pass to go to a show and it's a whole thing. You know how it is. Anyway, you've done all this great stuff. What are you most proud of? That's where we're going with this, buddy.
Sure. So, I mean, we've talked about it a lot already, but the thing that's going to stick around is the podcast for sure. After I am not paying, if I were to disappear tomorrow and stop paying for my website, like that would go down and, maybe my books wouldn't be available anymore, except for a little while on Amazon. And my course would probably stop being available because that's on a website and like all this stuff that I'm paying for. But then the stuff that has disseminated far enough that it'll stick around if I disappear tomorrow would be the podcast. And that to me, like, just has not only the best information, but it also has more of, I feel like, my own kind of friendly, kind character, which is, the thing that I'm proud of is when I get to be really friendly and kind with people.
Yeah.
The things that I most regret when I look back at times when that comes up, the things that still kind of have a bad feeling for me are when I was not that kind of character. And when I was, feel like maybe I was mean or hurtful or unkind somehow. And so that's the thing I'm most proud of, just because I feel like in a lot of ways I'm at my best, and also sharing what I feel like is really important information in a way that seems to be really accessible for people. And is a way that probably also because podcasts have helped me out so much. And even though I did such a bad job remembering the podcasts that have been helpful to me throughout the years, maybe I can send you a list later and you can just add it to the show notes for the podcast about that.
That's great.
But yeah, probably the podcast.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
Do you do like AES or NAM or any of those things?
No, but here's my plan. So people always ask me that and they're like, hey, are you coming to NAM? And I'm like, no, why? Like, why would I do that? So I've always given people a hard time about it. And I say, like, why are you wasting your money going to conferences? I never go to conferences. My career is perfectly fine without going to conferences. It's a lot of money to travel. I mean, so just to give you my viewpoint, like one of the main reasons I do courses online is to make it more accessible for people. And I feel like in-person seminars are, exclude a lot of people who are geographically and financially otherwise can't make it, limited.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. But here's my plan is next year I'm going to do 2. And I think after the year after that, I'll do 4. And then I want to like ramp up till I'm doing like maybe like 6 in a year and just see what it's like to like do all of them. And then, I feel like it's also just a professional responsibility of mine to be able to tell my students and my coaching clients and the people I interact with, hey, NAM is a great experience. You should definitely go and do it. Or, so I need to do it firsthand. So I don't do any of that stuff.
Okay.
Lots of people have told me that it's super valuable, the educational experience, the connections that you make, relationships that you build. I haven't done it yet myself. That's not true. I've been to some. When I lived in New York, I would just go by AES when it was there.
Yep.
When I lived in San Francisco, I would just go by AES when it was there. You're seeing a theme here.
Yeah.
If it's free and it's easy, I'll walk through.
Sure.
But I'm not going to. So I don't know. I'm pretty selfish of my time.
Yeah.
So flying somewhere, paying money to go somewhere, like it better be an amazing event. So I'm going to take off all those judgments though, and actually go and try some of that stuff out in 2019.
Does that mean?
What do you reckon?
Well, wait. Does that mean that January 2019 you're going to be at NAM?
Damn. Oh God, I've heard it's terrible. Honestly, I've heard it's just
terrible.
Like, so loud and so busy, and you stand in line for 50 minutes to go to the bathroom. I don't know. So I've heard all the bad things.
No.
You think it's awesome?
Yeah. I mean, again, the entrepreneur in me, like the excited guy. I went to AES and NAM last year, and I had a blast. Now, I learned a ton about how to be more selfish with my time at those things, and how like you don't have to go for all 3 or 4 days to NAMM, and you don't have to go for both days of AAS. Now, the nice part about AAS for me is it's 2 hours away. I drive down, and it's coupled with the NAB show, so I can hit the audio side, and then I can go over to the video side and satisfy all that as well. I'm going to do 1 day at AAS, and then I'm still working out my NAMM thing. This past year at NAMM, as a lot of my listeners know, I did a panel with somebody. I moderated a panel, and then to sort of help pay for the video portion of that, to have some friends come and help shoot that and everything, I got some sponsorships, and in exchange for the sponsorship, I also shot for them at their booth. So it was like work.
Wait, so let me see if I get this straight. NAMM is not paying you for this. You're doing this out of... They are?
Oh, no. I didn't get paid for that. No, I paid for my flight.
Okay, so they're not paying for you for this, so you had to figure out how to finance this on your own.
Yeah. Well, I needed to have 2 other people there to shoot the panel for me, right?
I'm just trying to talk about how NAMM sucks.
Yeah. No, I didn't think it... Look, it was the first time... You understand, too, it was the first time in my life I'd been to anything like that, except for AES. And everyone's like, dude, AES is like... super small compared to NAMM. It's crazy. And it was. And like, I'm a guitar head. So walking around and seeing all that stuff was amazing, and getting to play stuff.
I'm just being a jerk. I'm sure I'm going to have fun. And I think it's really cool that you did that event, and that you also then filmed it so you could share with other people. So are you going, so you're going to be there again?
I'm going to try to go again. I mean, look, it's September. I'm sitting here trying to figure out how I'm going to pay for it, where I'm going to stay and do all that. I got an Airbnb place. What's that?
They should pay people.
They should pay people. No, but here's what we could do. We could do a panel together about podcasting industry, and we could get our good boy. Do you know Liz Shaw?
Now I really feel like a jerk for saying it was crap, and now you're inviting me to it.
We should go.
Who do I know?
Liz Shaw from Recording Studio Rockstars.
No, who's that?
Oh, you should check that guy out. Liz is a great guy. He's in Nashville, and he's got a studio, and his show is all about the recording process. So he talks to top engineers and producers. He goes, I don't know if he's going to do AES this year, but he's going to be at NAMM probably again. It was great. Again, that sort of validation thing. I met people who listen to the show, and you're like, what? That's crazy.
You're a human. I'm a human.
Right. Here we are. So it's validating for that sense. Okay. It was cool to meet people because, again, a Skype interview for me is a big thing. But here they are in the flesh. Like, I actually get to meet you, that's cool. And seeing all the gear and all that kind of stuff, it's totally overwhelming. It's exhausting. But it was a tremendous 3 days. And then, of course, you're in LA. So for me, not only it's like going home, but I also knocked out 3 or 4 interviews while I was there.
Nice.
So that was cool. Same thing at AES last year. I interviewed Phil Dutteridge from Focusrite, up in the cafeteria at some quiet table in the back. And we just sat there and did an interview right there.
Okay.
So for that, it's super cool,
Yeah.
And
I'm sure I could make a lot of use of it. So what should we do our panel on?
I don't know yet. We'll figure it out. But that's a great part. You just submit. You're like, hey, I've got this idea. And they're like, okay, great.
So you're saying it's pretty easy to get in. I could just do one on hot chocolate.
You could do one on hot chocolate and sound designing the perfect pour of hot chocolate.
Yes. Cool.
All right. So maybe I'll see you there. Listen, we're going to stay in touch. The best way to find you, sounddesignlive.com.
That's right.
Outstanding. The new book comes out September 17th. I got to see when this episode's going to come out, because as we're talking, it could be that your episode comes out then.
Wow.
Oh my God, look at that. It does. September 17th. You're going to be up on the 17th, dude. This is all part of it. This is all in the episode. I don't edit, by the way.
I know you don't, and I hate that.
I know. I keep this shit organic, man. This is it. So the day your episode airs is the day your new book comes out, which is today for those of you listening.
Yay.
There you go. Nathan, dude, I want to thank you. Thank you, by the way, for having me on your show, whatever that was, a year ago. That was a boost for me, by the way, just so you know. Good. And you are definitely one of those guys and one of those sort of entities as a podcaster that when I started out, I was like, oh my God, I got to step my shit up. The ebooks and the training and the thing. I don't even know what I would train people on, but Either way, you got it together, dude, and I really appreciate it. And again, I thank you for always reaching out to have me be a part of something. The last two, which I've totally dropped the ball on, but I've written you back, as you said.
That's right.
And we will find something.
Until you start, ignoring my emails, I'm going to keep emailing you.
I love it. I won't ignore, man. All right, let's find something to do at NAMM or something together. And I love it. And I thank you again for being on our show. And yeah, stay safe out there, huh?
Larry, thanks for having me. And I love Roadie Free Radio. I hope you keep doing it for a long time.
You're a very nice man. I appreciate that. All right, dude. Be well out there.
All right, bye.
All right, Nathan, thank you so much for being on the show, buddy. I really appreciate you coming on here to talk to us. Folks, stay tuned next week for episode 104 with lighting designer Sarah Hike. Don't forget, you can follow us during the week at Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, YouTube, and Spotify, all as Roadie Free Radio. Check out the website, roadiefreeradio.com. Send me a note, because damn it, you know I want to hear from you. That's info@roadiefreeradio.com. And in the meantime, y'all be safe out there. No roadies, no rock and roll.